Well, I have some more of the roadbed pinned down, and I'll have to get ready to mark it out. You can see we've marked it there, but it's not marked here. Yeah, none of this has been marked out yet, so I'll need to do that. Now I'm going to repeat the process that I did with the zero elevation cork roadbed, and I'm going to use this section of Woodland Scenics 2% riser incline decline set, and I have it pinned in place, and I'll just take my marker, draw along the edge, and that way I'll know where to put my adhesive. I pinned down roadbed, marked it out until I ran out of T-pins. I pulled it all back up and everything marked out for gluing. I need to work on that area like I mentioned. So now I'll move on to the next section and repeat the process. I'm getting the roadbed for the industrial area pinned in place. What I want to do in this area is I want to bury the track, but at the same time I want to keep the track at the same elevation as all this track. So that's why I'm using the roadbed here, just to keep the height the same. But I'm going to have to figure out a way to bury it. So, but for now, I have the roadbed here. Well, it is time to glue down some roadbed. I'm using Loctite all-purpose adhesive. I have a putty knife, smooth it out. I'm only going to put down this inside track roadbed. I'll do this later. I'll try to keep my adhesive in between the lines I marked out, between these lines. Piece of cork roadbed. Got my T-pins. All right, got my first pieces of road bed glued down. Make sure everything's down flat. Okay. I have my first lengths of road bed glued down. And I went until I ran out of pins. Well, I have the cork road bed down for this section. And some of it's still curing. And here I filled in some of the gaps with pieces of cork. And the same up here with the turnout. And also here with this piece. This is all, I want this all to be buried track. So what I plan on doing, I'm going to let this adhesive sit up at least for another day. And then I'm going to take spackling and I'm going to go over it with spackling. There's a bit of a story with this Benchwork. I guess the first part would be, it took me 5 years to build it. I built one module. And then, I don't know, maybe a year or so later, I built a couple more. And then it sat for a number of years. And then I built a couple more modules, and then finally last year I finished the Benchwork. But in between that time, my ex-wife was having a new house built, and she asked me if I would store some of her stuff, and I did. And so a lot of it got piled up on this Benchwork in here. And as a result, some of the foam is a little bit damaged. And those are things I'm going to have to deal with. Now, if you look here, you can see it. There's a little bit of clearance underneath the level. There's a little dip in the foam where it's been crushed. So I'm going to have some issues like that. And so what I plan to do is I'll just cover everything with spackling and sand it with a long block sander until I get everything flat. There's really nothing else I can do about it. I have this Micromark digital level, and I have it set to degrees, but it can also be set to percent. And right now I'm measuring how level my track is side to side. Right now it's 0.15 degrees and it toggles between 0, so it's pretty flat. And so what I'm doing is I'm running the level on my track to figure out where it's flat side to side. And if it's not flat within a reasonable amount, and I'm giving myself 0.35 degrees is my number that I'm saying if it's within 0.35 degrees, I'm good. And that's just a totally arbitrary number. I didn't pick that number from anywhere. It's just something I picked out of my head. And here you can see my elevation is at 0%. And if I tip the level one way or the other, it'll read whatever it is. But it's not all that way. It's not all perfectly flat, although it's pretty good. And here I got 0.52% grade. And here it's back to 0 again. You know, and this is important to me. Obviously, I want it to be flat. There's a whopping 0.78. So I assume this is additional. Now on this outside mainline run, I'm going to use 2% incline decline risers, and I would assume that this grade is additional. So if I have a 0.78 or a 1% grade here in this point where my bench work is at 1% or 0.87%, and then if I add my 2% risers, well, I'm not at 2%, I'm at 2.87%. So it's something I have to think about. Now, obviously, my bench work, there's nothing I can do with that. If it's not completely level, then, I just have to work with it. So I'm going to use some spackling. Apply it to this road bed. And then once it dries, this stuff, once it dries, it turns white. And then I'll sand it, make sure my track is flat, or my road bed is flat. I know in this section of road bed, I have a little dip. Well, after applying the spackling, trying to flatten things out a little bit, and it's not perfect. Here I got 0.4 degrees, 0.65, 0.35, 0, which is good, 0, 0. You can see I had a little dip there. I want to do buried track in all of this section here. You can see I have some of the MDF board in place. Now I found that 3/16 MDF and the cork road bed are very close to the same thickness. And I was trying to think of a way to bury the track but keep the elevation the same as it is with the cork road bed. So this is what I came up with. Essentially, I'm placing MDF around the cork, and I just couldn't think of another way to have buried track without having an elevation change. So this is what I'm doing. Well, I pinned the Woodland Scenics risers in place, and this is a 2% grade. And now I'm going to attach these risers to the foam using a hot glue gun. And then these glue sticks. Well, I have the Woodland Scenics 2% risers glued in place with a hot glue gun. And now it's time to take some of these foam scraps that I've been saving for years and start building up some terrain around the risers. Well, I'm taking some scraps of this pink insulation foam. We're building up some terrain features here. And I'm just kind of winging it. I don't have a set plan. I know I want it to look southwestern. And we have a lot of mountains that have sheer sides, a lot of red rocks. Maybe a little bit further up north. I might want to have some of that. I think the challenge of modeling red rocks would be painting them. But they are a feature of the northern part of Arizona. You know, up around Sedona and Cottonwood, Clarkdale, Jerome, that area. And the Verde Canyon Railroad runs through that area. And the Verde Canyon Railroad, originally those tracks were part of the Santa Fe. And I think they served the mine there. There was a copper mine, big copper mine there. Well, I got the terrain roughed in, and I mean roughed in. You can see I made a tremendous mess. So I'll get that all cleaned up. And there's still a lot of work to do, but kind of got it roughed in and trying to get an idea what I want to do with it. So I'll clean up my mess and then just see what I have. I have some of the hill scenery roughed in. I don't know if I'm done with it yet or not. It certainly needs more carving, but I have to get a better idea of just what I want to do. I may add a little more height back there, but I haven't decided yet. And this is a 2% incline. And the foam, the foam needs to be shaped. And once I have the foam shaped a little closer to what I want to do, then I can add the fascia, because the fascia has to match the shape of the terrain. And once I have the fascia on, then I can start applying the plaster cloth to the scenery. Now, laying a straight edge on my riser, there is a dip somewhere in here. There's a small dip, and I'll have to take that out. Once I have the plaster cloth on, I'll have to put some spackling in there and then sand that out and get that dip out. I used MDF here to raise my terrain up so I can have buried track. I don't know if that's a good way to do it or not, but that's what I came up with. I didn't want to go from roadbed to no roadbed in that short distance right there. I thought the elevation change would be too sharp. So instead, I decided to use the cork roadbed and then just lift the ground up with the MDF. Now there'll be two bridges back here. Actually, there'll be three. There's an automotive bridge here, and then the zero elevation railroad bridge here, and then the higher elevation railroad bridge back there. And I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with that. I have to do something with that. I don't like that how it is, so I might add some more height. And then all this area in here, there has to be a bunch more foam added in here to give this some shape. So none of this is done. So the next thing, I got to get the terrain shaped the way I want it. And once I have it shaped, then I will cover it in plaster cloth. Thanks for watching. I'm making a little bit of progress. And hopefully, before too long, maybe get some track on there and run a locomotive up the hill. I don't know. We'll see how it goes.